Hi, and welcome to Mr. Carroll's Classroom. Today we're going to talk about the unit circle and how we can create it by hand. So let's check it out. Okay, we're going to do this in a two-step process. First, we're going to just kind of throw all the information out there all at once. And then we're going to go back and we're going to start with a clean slate and create it from scratch. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a complete unit circle all filled out. Okay, and what is a unit circle? So a unit circle is a circle that's on an XY coordinate plane, which is with its center at the origin, 0, 0, and a radius of 1. And that's really a good place to start, by the way. If you look at this unit circle, notice the points that are on the axes. If we're starting at 0, 0 with a radius of 1, then this point must be, since we're going to the right 1, it must be 1, comma 0. The one up here must be 0, 1, because we're going up 1. We're going left 1, so negative 1, 0. And we're going down 1, so 0, negative 1. And then the real question is, how do we fill in the rest of these, which we're going to talk about? Okay. Now, as we're going through this, I also want you to realize that, number one, there are an infinite number of points on this circle. The only reason why we're concentrating on these select few points are because these are the points that we can actually calculate by hand. But we can get the rest of the points the exact same way, and actually all points, even the ones listed here, and the infinite number of points in between, they all can be found by getting the x with the cosine of your angle, and the y is the sine of your angle. And what is that angle? Well, we always start at an angle of 0 on the positive x-axis. Okay? So right here, this point, the angle is 0 degrees. And then we rotate going counterclockwise. So as I move up to this point right here, this point is at 30 degrees. And then rotating up, this point's 45 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees. And then we completely wrap around, right, until we get back to 360 degrees. Now, we also have to realize that we can measure these angles in radians. And just to name a few, we start at 0 pi radians, then we go up to 1 pi over 6 radians, and then I'm going to skip this one, and then 2 pi over 6 radians, which simplifies to pi over 3, right? And then 3 pi over 6 radians simplifies to pi over 2, so on and so forth, until we get all the way around. Let's see, on 180 is pi radians, and then going all the way around, we have 2 pi radians is one revolution around this circle, okay? All right. So now let's go ahead and talk about how are we actually going to figure out these values? Like, where do we come up with the square root of 3 over 2 and comma 1/2 for this particular one? And what I really want you to concentrate on is that the unit circle is full of patterns, okay? And really, you don't have to know much in order to create the rest of the circle. In fact, when I create the unit circle, I only remember this 30-degree angle. I remember the 30-degree angle is square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. And the only other thing I remember is the 45-degree angle, which is square root of 2 over 2, comma square root of 2 over 2. After that, I simply apply the patterns and the reflections, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what those patterns actually are. And actually, before we even do that, we'll probably take a look and see how do we come up with square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2? Well, if I was trying to figure out this particular point right here, and I knew the radius is 1, or the hypotenuse is 1, then what I could do is I could drop this vertical line down and then create this right triangle. And so as I create this right triangle, let's go ahead and do some calculations. All right, so let's label this. Our radius, we know, is 1, right? And what's really nice about all of these triangles is that we're going to discover today is that they're all going to be our special right triangles. In this particular case, this angle right here is 30 degrees, which means, and this is the 90 degrees, which means this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle, okay? Now, we can follow our special right triangle rules to come up with the lengths of these other sides. Going from the long side to the short side, we're going to divide by 2. So that's going to be 1 divided by 2, or 1/2. Now, in order to go to the short side, to this middle side, middle length side here, then we multiply by the square root of 3, which means that this is the square root of 3 over 2. And there you go. This is actually how we find this point right here, which is square root of 3 over 2, which means that this side, we're going to the right by square root of 3 over 2. That's the x. And then we're going up by 1/2, which gives us our y. Okay, so that's why we have square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. Now, what I want to show you is a little pattern here. If I go to the 60 degrees, let's skip the 45 for now. We're going to go to 60 degrees, or going up an additional, or rotating an additional 30 degrees. This triangle right here, let me take away these notes, is identical, actually, identical to this other triangle that we just calculated. Okay, it's just flipped around a little bit. So let's go ahead and see how this works. And I'll take away that other triangle real quick. So here we have a radius of 1. Let's go to the short side down here. Divide by 2, 1/2. We'll go to this side over here by multiplying by square root of 3, square root of 3 over 2. So what does that mean? Well, my x value is 1/2, as we can see right here. And my y value, we're going up by the square root of 3 over 2. All right. Now, why do I not memorize this? Well, the reason why I don't memorize that is because when I take a look at these 2 points right here, notice that they have the exact same values, it's just the x and the y are flipped, right? For this 30 degree, we have square root of 3 over 2 for the x, and it becomes the y for 60 degrees. And for 30 degrees for the y, we have 1/2, and that becomes the x for 60 degrees. So all I end up doing is remember this 30 degree angle down here, and then I simply transpose the x and the y to come up with the 60, okay? Now, from there, you can actually come up with the rest of the, let me erase this, the rest of the points, or most of the points, very, very easily. Let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. These 2 points are simply going to be reflected over to get these 2 points, right? In fact, it's simply just the x's are going to become negative because that's the second quadrant. Then, with those 2 points, we're going to reflect those down to get these 2 points. And again, it's still the same x and y. It's just that now both the x and y's are negative. And then we reflect them again going over to the fourth quadrant where the x is positive and the y is negative. And so there you go. You actually have the majority of the points on this unit circle. Go ahead and erase that work. And actually, you know what? I'm going to come back to the 45 degrees in a second here. Let me show you all of the 30, 60, 90 triangles. Here they all are. And again, these are all the exact same triangles. They're just rotated around a little bit, okay? And as you can see, that gives us the majority of these points. And really, I just want to reiterate, all I ever remember is this 30 degree, and then I transpose the x and y's to get the 60, and then I simply reflect it around. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the 45. So I do these separately. So I do the 30, all the 30 increments first, and then I go to my 45s. So at 45 degrees, let's go ahead and figure out how we got square root of 2 over 2 for our x and y. All right, so our radius is 1, right? And so with a 45, 45, 90 special right triangle, how do we go from a hypotenuse to one of the shorter sides? Well, we divide by the square root of 2. We multiply by the square root of 2 to get to the hypotenuse. Well, we have to divide by square root of 2 to go back. So this is going to be 1 divided by square root of 2. However, we don't like radicals in our denominators, so I'm going to multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. Giving the top square root of 2 divided by the bottom, which is square root of 2 times the square root of 2, which is the square root of 4, or 2. And there you go. That's how you get the square root of 2 over 2 for this side. And of course, this side is going to be the same because they are identical, which is what gives us our x and y of square root of 2 over 2 for both. And then again, simply going to reflect these around in order to get our other, other points. And let me go ahead and show you all of the 45-degree angles here. And there they are. And you can see they're all square root of 2 over 2. For the x's and the y's, it's just simply, hey, if you're in the second quadrant, the x's are negative. Third quadrant, the x and the y's are negative. And then the fourth quadrant, x is positive, y is negative. And of course, in the first, we're always positive. Okay, so that really completes the unit circle right there. You really just went through all of it. The only thing you haven't done is practice it, and especially these radians here. But don't worry, we'll get to practice that in a second. But before we do that, I just want to show you very quickly. Here we have our axes, which you can see this is just 1 and 0 depending on where you're at, and -1. Okay. Then you can go around in 30-degree increments, and you can see, other than the axes, these are always going to be root 3 over 2 and 1/2, and combinations of those with positives and negatives. And then you can go around and do your 45 degrees, okay, which is always going to be square root of 2 over 2, comma square root of 2 over 2, and then of course they're negative reflections. Okay, so let's go ahead now and let's create this thing from scratch. Grab my pen first. Let's do, we'll do yellow, I suppose. Okay, so the first thing I always do is I'm going to go around and kind of like put in my points, I guess. So here's a point right here. I'm going to go by, let's go by 30s. Actually, let's do 90s first. So we're going to go 0 degrees. Let's go ahead and put 0 degrees here. This one's going to be 90 degrees. Whoops, that's 90 degrees. Then we have 180 degrees. Put 180. And then we have 270 degrees. And then coming all the way back around, 0 degrees is the same thing as 360 degrees. And you could keep rotating like it's the same thing as 720 degrees as well. All right, but we typically just do one revolution. All right, I'm going to save radians for now. We'll come back to those in a second. Actually, yeah, we'll come back to those in a second. I like to do those with my 30s. Let's go ahead and do the 30s now. So about 30 degrees is here, and then about 60 degrees. Let's just go ahead and lay these out, since these are all going to be evenly spread. And then we'll come back and put in the degrees. Okay, so this is 30 degrees, 60 degrees. Let's see here. This is 120 degrees, 150 degrees, and then of course our 180 degrees. Add another 30 to get 210. 240 degrees, 270 degrees, 300 degrees, and then 330 degrees, and of course getting back to 360. Now, it's a little bit more challenging for students. Let's go ahead and do radians. All right, so remember 0 degrees is 0 pi radians, and I'm actually going to go to 180 real quick. 180 is the same thing as pi radians, okay? Just keep that in mind, okay? And I guess, well, let's go start rotating around, okay? So knowing that 180 degrees is pi radians, this is split up into 6. The first, or I should say the top half of this circle is split up into 6 30-degree angles. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, hey, this is 1 pi over 6. And we'll come back and we will simplify these later. They do have to be simplified, but for now, let's just go ahead and say, hey, we're going by 1/6 pi's. So this is going to be 2 pi over 6 radians. This one's going to be 3 pi over 6 radians. This one is going to be 4 pi over 6 radians, 5 pi over 6. This is 6 pi over 6, which is just pi. I've already reduced that. That's fine. This one's going to be 7 pi over 6, and then 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6. Oops, 10 pi over 6. And then 11 pi over 6. And then this one is going to be 12 pi over 6. Let's actually start reducing now. So 12 pi over 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So that's 2 pi. All right, let's go ahead and reduce these. 1 pi over 6 is just 1 pi over 6. 2 pi over 6 is, let me make this a little bit smaller here. See if I can switch over to my brush easily. There we go. What did I say this is? This is 2 pi over 6, which is 2 over 6 is 1/3. So pi over 3. 3 pi over 6 simplifies to pi over 2 radians. 4 pi over 6 is going to simplify to 2 pi over 3 radians. 5 pi over 6 is simplified. Pi is simplified. 7 pi over 6 is simplified. 8 pi over 6 is going to be 4 pi over 3 radians. Put little commas in here. Let's see here. 9 pi over 6 is 3 pi over 2 radians. 10 pi over 6 is going to be 5 pi over 3 radians. And then, of course, we have 11 pi over 6, which is simplified, and then back to 2 pi. Okay, so honestly, the radians is one of the hardest parts, okay? All right, let's continue on now, and I'm not going to put my 45s in here yet, okay? I'm going to label these, all right? Remember, I said all I really ever remember is the 30 degrees and the 45 degrees. Well, let's start with that 30 degrees. The 30 degrees, the value here, maybe I'll use a different color to show these values. Let's use like a lighter pink color. Remember, we just went over this. The x value, or the cosine of 30 degrees, is the square root of 3 over 2. And the sine of 30 degrees, or pi over 6, if you want to use radians, is 1/2. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transpose those numbers to get my 60 degrees. So that's going to be, 1/2 root 3 over 2. And then I'm simply going to reflect these. All right, so over here, we have the exact same thing as the 60 degrees reflected. So that's going to be 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. However, my x is negative. All right, the 30 degrees gets reflected. That's root 3 over 2, comma 1/2. And again, the x is negative. And down here, we're going to reflect these down. So this, this 210 is going to get reflected from the 150, okay? Reflect these down. So that's going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, and then negative 1/2. And then this guy right here, the 240 degrees, is going to get reflected from the 120 going down. So that is going to be negative 1/2, and then negative root 3 over 2. Sorry, a little sloppy there. And then again, this fourth quadrant, you can either reflect these ones down or these ones over. Doesn't matter. You should end up getting the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and reflect from the third quadrant going over here, so like that. But anyways, so this 300 degrees comes from 240, so that's going to be positive 1/2 negative root 3 over 2 in the y. And then the 330 degrees is going to be positive root 3 over 2. Comma negative 1/2. There we go. We have actually, we're almost done with this unit circle. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't do the axes at all, did we? Let's go ahead and label these axes. This axis right here, well, we're just going positive 1 over, so that's 1, 0. At 90 degrees, we're going up 1, so 0 in the x, positive 1 in the y. At 180 degrees, we're going negative 1 in the x, 0 in the y. And 270 degrees, we are going 0 in the x and down 1 in the y. All right, and so the last thing to do here is to simply fill in our 45-degree angles. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to come around here and just fill in these points. I'm not going to have a lot of space, am I? But we'll try to squeeze it in there as best as possible. All right, so first of all, this is going to be 45 degrees. And then we go another 45 to get 90. And then 90 plus 45 is 135. And then 180. 180 plus 45 is 225 degrees. Plus another 45 is 270. And then 270 plus 45 is 315 degrees. So this is 315 degrees. All right, let's go ahead and fill in our radians now. So now this is going to be separated into fourths because these 45 degrees, right? So, and since 180 is pi, then 45 degrees must be pi over 4. So we'll say pi over 4, and I'll simplify these ones right away, I guess. So this is pi over 4 radians, all right? And then 1 pi over 4. Then this is 90 degrees is 2 pi over 4. 135 is going to be 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4. And then here we have 4 pi over 4, which is just pi. This one's going to be 5 pi's over 4, just adding these quarter pi's. 6 pi over 4 for 270, which is 3 pi over 2. And then 7 pi over 4 for the 315. Again, radians is probably going to be your most challenging piece until you get used to them. All right, and then labeling the 45 is going to be very easy because both the x and the y is square root of 2 over 2. And then we're simply going to reflect this around. So at 135 degrees, we have negative root 2 over 2 for the x, positive root 2 over 2 for the y. At 225 degrees, they're both negative. And then at 315 degrees, we have the x is going to be positive root 2 over 2, and the y is going to be negative root 2 over 2. Okay, and I believe we are all finished here. So there is the entire unit circle. That's how you can create it by hand and why it's created the way it is. And also, hopefully, you can really see there, as long as you remember just that initial 30 degrees, then you can pretty much just wrap that around using transpositions and reflections, and then same thing with the 45. So just remember the 30 degrees and the 45 degrees, and you should be able to create the rest of the unit circle from there. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye now.